Hello, and welcome to Snohomish County Health Department's Septic Care Workshop. We would like to thank you for taking the time to view this workshop and learn more about your septic system and how to take care of it. We're going to cover several topics during this workshop, including the basics of how septic systems work and the different types of systems that exist, how to find your septic system records called as-built and locate your system on your property, potential problems and signs of a failing septic system, how to care for and maintain your system and why it's important, working with contractors for inspections and pumping and other situations. And finally, we'll talk about the Savvy Septic program and types of financial assistance available for taking care of your septic system. With that, I'll start things off with a general overview of what a septic system is, and later on, we'll get into more detail about the specific components of septic systems. The county made this video showing how wastewater from your home flows through your septic system, so we will start here. It's a great visual to begin with before we move on. I'll play a portion of it, and then I'll go over the information a bit more.
Septic care starts with understanding how your system works. While there are many types of septic systems, they share common key features. When you use water in your home, the wastewater flows down your drains and into your septic tank. Most tanks have two chambers, though older systems may have only one. Beneficial bacteria begin breaking down waste in the tank. Solids settle on the bottom. Floatables, such as oil and grease, rise to the top, and the liquid in the middle, called effluent, flows to a second chamber, where another round of settling occurs. Over time, the solids and floatables build up and need to be pumped out. Your system may have risers that allow for easy access to the tank. Risers make access for inspections and pumping much easier and can be added if your system doesn't have them. The effluent then flows out of the tank into your drain field, where it is dispersed over a layer of gravel before sinking into the soil. As effluent drains through the gravel and soil, bacteria break down pollutants so that the water is clean before it reaches our groundwater. Your system also likely includes a reserve area, which is set aside for future use as a drain field if your current one fails. Your system was designed specifically for your property. Gravity systems are the most basic type and can be used in well-drained soils. For sites with poorly draining soils, slopes, or limited space, a more complex system, which can include pumps and additional components, may be necessary to make sure the water is fully treated. The wastewater from
All right, hopefully that gave you a bit of background on the general process. I do want to go into some more detail on how exactly septic systems turn wastewater into clean water that eventually becomes our drinking water from wells and other water sources. As mentioned in the video, the first stop is the septic tank, where treatment begins. In the tank, the solids settle out so that the drain field area doesn't get clogged up. Then biological processes start to break down solids into liquid waste. If these processes didn't occur, your tank would fill up very quickly with solids and you'd need pumping all the time. From here, the wastewater will either go out to the soil in the drain field, or it might make a stop in a pretreatment unit first. Depending on the conditions of your property, a pretreatment unit might be necessary before wastewater can be sent to the drain field. Examples of pretreatment include aerobic treatment units, which help reduce bacteria by mixing in more oxygen, helping good bacteria destroy bad bacteria in the water. UV lights also disinfect wastewater, and sand filters and biofilters further process water to remove pathogens before the wastewater continues on to the drain field. Soil is the last stop, and this is where final treatment occurs before treated wastewater reaches our groundwater and our wells, lakes, rivers, and shores. Soil has millions of microbes, and it handles most of the treatment. When wastewater drains through your soil under your yard, these microbes and other biological and chemical processes destroy pathogens. They remove excess nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus, which are really high in wastewater, and toxins are broken down. Treatment in the soil is affected by things like soil type, for instance, whether it has more clay or sand, and how deep your soil is. The amount of water and oxygen are also important, as a lot of these treatment processes require sufficient oxygen levels to work. It's also important to note the amount of time your wastewater spends in your septic system and the drain field. If it all rushes through too fast, it won't be treated well enough. This is why systems are designed uniquely for each property. Here is another visual showing an overview of septic system parts. The main components are the tanks, pumps, and treatment units where raw sewage begins to be treated. Then it goes into a distribution box or distribution device to be dispersed in your drain field in your yard. Additionally, all systems after the mid-80s are required to have a reserve area, which is where a new drain field would go if your current system fails. This picture is showing a basic system, and like the video mentioned, septic systems can range from simple gravity systems to highly complex setups, depending on the conditions of your property. Listed here are some different types of septic systems, including gravity systems, low pressure distribution systems, aerobic treatment units, time dosing systems, mound and sand filters, and other alternatives like Oscar and Glendon systems, etc. You might recognize some of these terms listed, and we will go over them in more detail later on in the workshop. And if you're not sure what kind of system you have or where it is on your property, I will show you how you can find out. So there are ways to figure out what type of system you have by finding your septic system records called as-builts. As-built records are drawings of your property and septic system created by a septic designer after your system is installed and approved by the health department. In an as-built, you can learn about where your system and all the components are located on your property, what type of system you have, and sometimes what year it was built. Snohomish County residents can use a website called Online RME to find their as-builts. And if you're not sure if you have a septic system or you don't know what type you have, this website can tell you. It will also show you the record drawing so that you can see where your system, tank, drain field, and reserve areas are on your property. Additionally, you can see your maintenance records here. These records are also useful if you're buying or selling a home, getting landscaping or tree work done on your property, or building structures on your property. And if your system is much older, you may not have an as-built record in your system. In the past, not all systems were recorded when they were installed like they are nowadays. And if that's the case, you can hire a septic professional to try to determine its location and type. All right, so now I'm going to show you how to find these records online. And you may have already taken a look, but you can still feel free to follow along and bear with me as I go ahead and share my other screen. All right, as you can see here, we are at Snohomish County Health Department's website, snohd.org. So the first thing you'll do is go to Healthy Places. And once you're at Healthy Places, you'll want to look for Septic and click on that. And then here on the Septic page, you want to look for as-built records. Now there is a button here, and there's also an option on the side. We'll click on this button here. And now that you're here, you can click on Access Records. And now we're at Online RME. So the first thing here is you'll want to check and make sure this information is correct. The state is Washington and the county is Snohomish. And then we'll go ahead and enter the street number and street name. So you'll enter your address's information, and I'll be using an example address. And you also want to pay attention to this little notice. So for the street name, don't enter the street direction or the street suffix. Less is more. And then you'll submit your search. And as you can see here, there are many options. We want to find the correct one. You'll just want to make sure it has your address, and then you'll click on the little magnifying glass. And now that we're on this page, we're going to look at site details. And under this, you should see scanned septic system records. Now, if you don't see that, it means there are no records in online RME for your property, but that's okay. I'll get into that in just a moment. So we'll click on this button, and then you can see here we have as-built 1, cover sheet, and application. So for our purposes, we're looking for the as-built, but you can also take a look at these other sheets as they do have some useful information. So we'll click on this little magnifying glass now. And we have the as-built right here. And we will go over this in just a few moments and how to interpret this information you see. So now that we're back here, I'll just show you quickly. You can click and see the cover sheet, and you can click and see the application. Once you're done taking a look at these documents, you can go over to Site Work History and click on Service History. And under this tab, you can see pumping and inspection reports. So here for this property, we see there's a pumping report. And if you'd like to take a look at your report, you can just go over here under Report, and there's an icon. You'll click on that. And voila, we have a tank pumping report with some information that may be helpful to you. You can also click on this icon to receive an email when a report is submitted. So you'll just click on that and enter your information, and then you'll be notified. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and I will go back to the other screen, so just a moment. All right, so if you weren't able to pull anything up on online RME, that's okay. We just want to make sure people know where to look for their septic records. And you can always contact the health department after the workshop, and we can provide you with assistance if you think you should see records in there, but you don't. So here, this is an example of an older cover sheet and application. If yours looks similar, it may not indicate what type of system you have. So to find out more about your system, you can reach out to a contractor who can potentially determine the type of system you have and where it's located. And some older as-builts are hand-drawn, and they can be a bit trickier to read. So in this example, the septic tank is in yellow, and the drain pipes, called laterals, of the drain field, they are in blue, and they're spread out in a couple different directions. Older as-builts may not show a reserve area as they were not required at all until the mid-80s. And then in the mid to late 80s, the reserve area was required on the design application, but not on the as-built. So if you don't see one on your records, that could be the reason why. The records for your property on online RME may also only have your as-built, and the health department's other files that are older, they may contain other information that's useful to you. So you can always feel free to put in a public records request if you'd like to see if there's more information on your property. For repairs and replacements and building permits, a reserve area will be required, and you can contact a septic designer to designate a reserve area if you don't have one. This here is an example of a current cover sheet, application form, and system specifications form. On these, you'll be able to see what type of system you have depending on which boxes are checked. There is a lot of information on these forms, but the main part you're looking to better understand your system is the pretreatment type and the dispersal type. And you can see these parts are highlighted here on the screen. Some of these are listed as acronyms, so if you aren't sure what they mean, I'll cover those. For pretreatment types, if your wastewater needs that extra round of treatment before going to the drain field, there is SF, which means sand filter, ATU, which means aerobic treatment unit, and PBF, which means pack bed filter. Not all systems will have pretreatment, and if PBF is marked on your records, I will not be covering that specific component of septic systems in this workshop since that's pretty rare, but you are welcome to contact us if you have one and want to know more information about it. For dispersal type, meaning how wastewater is released into the drain field, there is gravity, mound, LPD, which means low pressure distribution, SSD, which means subsurface drip, and SLB, which means sand-lined bed. Now, I will get into some of these types in more detail, but for now, just note what type is listed on the documents you're able to view in Online RME. In this example, for someone who has a gravity system, which is the most basic type of system, the septic tank is shown in yellow, and it is a small rectangle with a couple circles near the house. From the tank, there is a line outwards towards the drain field, which is highlighted in blue, and next to it is the reserve area in purple. This next as-built has an additional component compared to the last example. There's still a septic tank, but next to it is also a pump tank, which is highlighted in orange. From the pump tank, there's a line out to the drain field, which is in blue again. And this one shows a manifold as the distribution device for the drain field, which indicates that it is a low pressure distribution system. And you can see the reserve area is highlighted in purple. This example has the most parts to it, and it includes the septic tank in yellow, which is labeled FAST, which is a type of aerobic treatment unit, or ATU. And next to it, there is a pump tank, which is highlighted in pink. And inside the pump tank, there is a UV light. There's also a blower on the side of the house, which is the part that pumps a bunch of air into the aerobic treatment unit. And there's also a line that goes out from the pump tank to the drain field, which is highlighted in blue. And this drain field is a drip system. Their reserve area is also set aside, which you can see in purple, and it would be another drip system if they had to replace their current drain field. So now that you know how to find out what type of system you have, I'll go over in more detail the components of a septic system. So maybe you noted that your system has a pump tank, or an ATU, or a certain type of drain field, and you can see what parts in the next slides specifically apply to you. And if you haven't looked up your records or you have difficulty pulling them up, that's okay. The rest of the workshop will still make sense without that information. Over the next few slides, we'll follow the path of wastewater from your house out to the drain field and show you what these components actually look like, since nearly all of them are underground and hidden from view. The septic tank is the first stop for wastewater in your septic system. Wastewater flows from your home and into the tank through the inlet baffle. In the tank, solids are separated from the wastewater into scum and sludge layers. Newer systems have two-compartment tanks, like in this diagram, but some old systems may only have one compartment. If your system has two compartments, the wastewater will move through the center wall baffle and be separated into sludge and scum layers again in the second compartment. The goal of the tank is to make sure as many solids are filtered out of the wastewater as possible, which helps keep the rest of your system from getting clogged with excess waste. Once the wastewater has flowed through your tank, it will exit through the outlet baffle and flow to the distribution box or a pretreatment unit if needed. Here are some pictures of septic tanks before they are buried. They can be made of concrete, plastic, or fiberglass. The inside of a septic tank has baffles to move wastewater from one component of your system to the next. This picture shows what the inside of a newer tank looks like. The lid has been removed and you can see the inlet baffle. The layer that floats in a septic tank is called the scum layer, and this layer is the one that sinks. Oh, my apologies. The layer that floats is called the scum layer, and the layer that sinks is called the sludge layer. These layers build up, and once they reach a certain level, your tank needs to be pumped. This picture is an example of what the scum layer can look like when the lid is taken off of your tank. And you can also see the inlet baffle here as well. Tanks can also have filters attached to the outlet baffles to prevent excess particles from exiting the tank and clogging the drain field. These pictures show a couple different types of filters that exist. Every septic tank needs to have a secure lid. Lids can be made of plastic, concrete, or steel. Since tanks are buried underground, risers are often attached for easier access when your tank needs to be inspected or pumped. If you don't have risers, then you'd have to dig to reach your tank lids every time. If your septic system was installed after 1995, then it should already have risers since they were required for systems built after this time. If you don't have risers on your septic system, you can get them installed. Some systems have a pump tank, which pumps wastewater out to the drain field. This action can be controlled by on and off floats, which are activated when water reaches certain levels in the tank, or it can be based on timers, which will send a dose of wastewater out at certain intervals. The top left image shows an overall diagram of a pump tank. This image on the right, that is of a pump outside of the tank before it's installed, and in the lower left corner, there's an image of a pump tank with the lid off. This is what it looks like inside. And you can see the floats attached to the pipe on the right, which means that this one uses on and off floats to signal when to pump the water out. And those floats are right here. An aerobic treatment unit, also known as an ATU, is a pre-treatment unit that can be part of a septic system. The diagram in the lower left corner shows that the wastewater is first separated out in the tank, then it moves on to an aerobic treatment tank, then onto the pump tank. It uses an aerator to increase the activity of aerobic bacteria in the tank and further treat the wastewater before it enters the drain field. If you have an ATU, you would see the aerator or blower motor visible above ground, which is what is shown on the bottom right image. Some ATUs also have a UV light that helps treat the wastewater. Once the wastewater exits the tank, either the septic tank or the pump tank, depending on your setup, it moves through a distribution device. This image shows a distribution box, and this device allows wastewater to be distributed evenly throughout the drain field. Sometimes the distribution device is a manifold, like in this picture, which is part of a low-pressure distribution system. And here the valves can be adjusted to make sure the wastewater is being evenly distributed into the drain field. All septic systems, except for gravity-only systems, have an alarm to warn homeowners that something is not working right. So if your alarm is going off, please call a contractor. Do not just turn your alarm off and ignore it. Please have a contractor come out to inspect your system to see if something is broken or wrong, or if your system needs to be pumped. And while you're waiting for a septic professional to come inspect it, please try to limit your water usage. These images are just a few examples of the alarms you might see on the outside of control panels. The drain field is where effluent goes for final treatment after it has moved through the tank. The size of the drain field depends on the amount of wastewater being treated, which is calculated based on the number of bedrooms in your home and the soil conditions of your property. As the wastewater travels down, the soil treats the wastewater and removes pollutants, and it eventually becomes groundwater. The following pictures will be of different types of drain fields before and after being backfilled and covered with grass. This picture shows a gravity drain field with washed gravel. Here, the wastewater flows through the laterals, which are drain pipes with holes that allow the wastewater to drain through, and then it goes into the washed gravel, and then it goes into the soil. You can see in this picture that the trench has gravel, and on top is a geotextile fabric to keep dirt from clogging things up once it gets backfilled. This picture shows a gravelless gravity drain field. These chambers are made of sturdy plastic, and the wastewater will enter the chamber, then drain through the soil to be treated. If your drain field is higher than your septic tank, you may have a pump tank to help it reach the drain field. This picture shows a gravelless low-pressure distribution drain field, and this one is slightly different from the last one because a low-pressure distribution system involves sending doses of wastewater out to each lateral with even pressure so that it goes down the whole line. LPDs always use a pump tank, and some may receive a dose of effluent from a siphon instead, but that is pretty rare. The green lids here will be visible in your drain field even after it's covered up. The rectangular one at the front provides easy access to the distribution device that has valves, and the smaller circular lids at the ends, they allow for easy inspection of each line. These photos show pressure tests being done on a low pressure distribution drain field. The water is squirting out of the pipe with pressure all the way down the length of the lateral. And after testing and making sure everything is right, these get covered up. This picture shows a drain field that has subsurface drip lines. These drip lines have small emitters that let out tiny amounts of wastewater into the soil without oversaturating the drain field. The amount of wastewater exiting the emitter is almost more like a vapor than a drip because it's such a small amount. And with a drip system, there will always be an air vacuum relief valve to prevent soil from being sucked into the drip line and clogging it. So you'll see a small green lid even after the drain field is covered up. This picture is of a mound system after it's been installed. And we didn't have a picture of one of these before install since they're not as common. But this type of system was installed if there wasn't enough suitable soil to treat the wastewater, so they built above ground to allow extra space for the wastewater to filter through. This diagram shows how a sand filter fits into your septic system if you have one. After passing through the septic tank and pump tank, the wastewater goes to the sand filter, which is a container of sand that the water is dispersed over. The smaller picture shows a real-life version of what this looks like. And there are several layers that the effluent passes through to be filtered, and then a pump well in the center pumps it out to the drain field for final treatment. So it's almost like your wastewater is going to go through two drain fields instead of just one. The first one being the sand filter, and the second one being your actual drain field into the soil. This image shows a Glendon biofilter, which is not very commonly used anymore, but they can be installed where there's very little good soil under the ground. On your as-built and other septic records, you might see this called upflow media filtration, which is the type of system it is, and Glendon is more like the brand name. This system has containers without lids that are filled and covered with imported sand, and then very small amounts of effluent are sent out to the containers frequently, and the wastewater wicks upwards. As it moves upwards, the effluent is treated before it moves out of the concrete containers and goes back down through the sand on the outside of the containers. And then the treated effluent is dispersed into the native soil. The last type of system I'll show you is called an Oscar system, which is more commonly used nowadays in areas with shallow soil. Like the last system I showed you, it may also be marked as something else on your as-built and other septic records, called ASTM C33 treatment sequence. And that is the type of system it is. And again, Oscar is kind of more like the brand name. Due to the coiled design, they take up less space than other types of systems and use drip tubing with emitters like the drip system I showed you earlier. The coils are placed over imported sand, which the wastewater drains through before reaching native soil. It receives very small amounts of wastewater in frequent doses. And regardless of whatever type of system you have, once your system gets installed, it gets covered up. Here is an example of a drain field before they replanted grass. And yes, it just looks like a dirt lot. And here's another example of a drain field once grass has grown back in. Monitoring ports should still be visible above ground or at ground level after being covered up, like we mentioned earlier, although this system does not have any visible in the picture. And while most drain fields will look like a plain area of lawn, if you have a mound system, you will clearly see a large mound on your property. And finally, we have the reserve area, which should be a blank area of your property. This is where a new drain field will go if your current one fails and needs to be replaced. Depending on the size of your property and soil type, the kind of system that would be installed in the reserve area may or may not be the same as your original drain field. So now that we've covered all the components of a septic system and how they work, let's review the process. First, wastewater flows from your house to your septic tank. Here, the tank will separate the sludge and scum layers and may treat your wastewater in additional ways if you have pretreatment units. Then the wastewater is distributed to the drain field, where aerobic bacteria in the soil fully treats the wastewater. Once the wastewater has trickled through the soil and is fully treated, it enters the groundwater and can flow into our natural water bodies like lakes, rivers, streams, and the ocean. All right, that was a lot of information. So please feel free to pause the video here and take a short break if you would like. I will be setting just a 2-minute timer in case you want to take a quick break, or you can feel free to skip ahead. All right, now that we've had a little break and we've covered in more detail how a septic system works, I'll talk about how you can take care of your system because no matter what type of system you have, there are lots of things you can do as a homeowner to prevent problems and promote longevity and safety. Here are the main don'ts if you have a septic system. So, if you have a garbage disposal, please try to avoid using it if at all possible because it grinds up food into such fine particles, and these solids and grease can make it through your system and start to clog up holes in the drain field. Using a simple sink strainer is a great alternative to a garbage disposal. You also want to make sure you don't overload your system. Septic systems are only meant to handle so much water at once, and doing laundry, showering, and dishes all in a row can stress your system, especially laundry, which uses lots of water. Even though it may be tempting to get all the laundry done on the weekend, try to space your loads out and try not to do more than one load of laundry a day. Additionally, there's no need to use septic system additives. They are not needed for your system to work properly, and they aren't proven to be effective, so they're mostly just a waste of money. Here are the main do's to keep your system healthy. Leaky sinks, toilets, and other fixtures can put added stress on your system and drain field because the excess water is going into your system. If you notice any leaks, you want to get them fixed as soon as possible. And if you have an older home or you don't have low flow fixtures, you can install things like low flow shower heads or toilets to decrease the amount of water going down the drain. You'll also probably save money if you get these things fixed, so it's a win win. It's also important to make sure downspouts, runoff, sprinklers, and irrigation or other sources of water are being directed away from your drain field to avoid saturating the soil with extra water. And most importantly, have your system inspected regularly to catch any issues and get it pumped whenever it's recommended. So, how often should you get your system inspected? Well, maintenance and inspection frequencies can vary depending on the type of system you have. Gravity systems should be inspected at least once every 3 years, and other types of systems, including low pressure distribution, aerobic treatment units, and other advanced systems, should be inspected annually unless otherwise specified by the manufacturer of your system. As far as things that can go down the drain, there are lots of things you should avoid. There are better ways to dispose of these things so that you don't harm your septic system. Medications should not be flushed because they can mess with the balance of bacteria in your tank. They should instead be taken to a safe disposal site, and we will include some different links on our website that you can see so that you know where to dispose of your medication. Paints, varnishes, and stains should also never go down the drain. They can cause an imbalance of bacteria in your septic tank, and latex paints especially can clog things up. Instead of pouring those down the drain, latex and water-based paint should be left out to dry or absorbed with cat litter and then thrown away in the garbage. And oil-based paints and stains actually can't go in the trash, and instead they should be taken to a drop-off location, and we will also have a link as a resource for you later on. Wipes, coffee grounds, food scraps, grease, tissues, diapers, feminine hygiene products, and pet waste should all go in the trash. Even if these items claim they're flushable, they should not be flushed. And you may have heard of or tried septic additives before, but as I mentioned, these are not necessary or beneficial to septic systems. Also, when it comes to strong detergents, you should try to limit your usage and use gentle soaps whenever possible. Your septic system is not a garbage, and the only things going down your drains should be water, toilet paper, human waste, and soap for washing. All right, now on to the hot topics of soap and toilet paper. Your system is meant to handle toilet paper and normal amounts of soap, but there are often a lot of questions about what types of soaps are okay for septic systems and what type of toilet paper is best. With soaps, whether it's laundry detergent, dishwasher detergent, or bathroom soap, less is more. If you're wondering whether liquid or powder soap is better, what matters the most are the ingredients in the soap and how much you use. Current research indicates no difference in liquid or powder, but you want to pay attention to what's in them. Your system can break down biodegradable soaps more easily, and they are less harsh on the bacteria in the tank. And soaps that are concentrated generally mean they have less fillers in them that could clog your system. Also, if you have an ATU, it's best to avoid super sudsy soaps because those can cause it to foam a lot. You want to avoid soaps with fillers, which will clog your system, and those are more common in powdered detergents. Soaps with harsher chemicals or additives like bleach, fabric softeners, or antibacterial ingredients are also not recommended. But if you do need to use them, just keep it at a minimum. Only use the amount of soap you need to get the job done, and remember that the amount of foam or suds a soap produces is not an indicator of its cleaning power. Just because you don't see suds doesn't mean you should add more soap. As for toilet paper, the most important thing is to only use what you need. Again, less is more, and the more you use, the faster the scum layer will build up in your tank and it'll require pumping more often. With both of these items, the terms septic safe or anything like that are not regulated terms and are simply used for marketing. If you follow these guidelines and you use only the amount you need, you should be just fine. Beyond that, the choices of certain soaps and toilet paper won't completely kill your system. It may just impact how often your tank needs to be pumped. So now that you know what not to put down your drain, let's go over what not to do with your drain field and reserve area. You don't want to plant trees or a vegetable garden on top of your drain field because the roots can infiltrate your system and cause cracks and clogs. The excess water going into your drain field from watering your garden is also not good for it. Don't park cars or put heavy equipment on your drain field or reserve area, and keep your cattle and livestock off of these areas. Heavy weight compacts the soil, which can make your reserve area unusable, and it impacts your drain field by restricting the movement of oxygen to the soil beneath where treatment occurs. You also risk cracking and compressing your septic system components like gravellous chambers, drip lines, and pipes. Lastly, don't install structures on top of your drain field or in your reserve area. This includes patios, pools, driveways, basketball courts, and fire pits, among other things. There are a lot of things you shouldn't do with your drain field, but here's what you can do. Grass. Grass is the best option for your area above your drain field. Now, there may be some instances where your drain field is in an area that doesn't grow grass very well, like wooded areas. So there are some plants you can use instead, although grass really is ideal if possible. But if your grass is struggling and you want something else to plant, you can plant native shallow rooted plants, and that can work just fine. It's important that the roots aren't deep so that they don't clog up the pipes or the holes in your drain field and cause it to fail. You also want to choose ones that don't go seeking water, because some plants may grow long roots to reach the water that's constantly being dispersed, and those roots can clog your system. So pick ones that don't love water. Native plants are also best for the health of the soil, and this middle picture here is of a native plant called bunchberry, and on the right there's a native plant called kinnikinick. You want to be very careful about which plants you choose, but again, grass is your best bet. And sometimes people may think it's just better to cover things up with bark, gravel, or wood chips, but those are actually not helpful to a drain field, and they can restrict the movement of oxygen to the soil beneath where the treatment occurs. Um, your drain field definitely should have some type of plant cover though. Again, ideally grass, because it keeps the soil healthy and the microbes in the dirt happy so that they can do their job and treat the water properly. So before we move on to another topic, I do have a few more things to note related to septic system safety. As I mentioned earlier, looking up your as-built records can help you locate your system, and knowing this information can help you avoid constructing structures over your drain field and driving cars and heavy equipment on it that could damage your drain field or reserve area. It's also important to check your drain field and downslope areas for broken equipment, holes, odors, wet spots, or surfacing sewage. You also want to make sure you're using durable lids that can be secured in place and regularly check for damage and cracks, and your lids should be screwed securely into the risers. If you have kids and pets, you know that both are naturally curious and often love to explore outdoors, but playing around the septic tank or trying to open the lid can be dangerous. Kids or pets can be seriously injured from falls into or around the tank, and they can also be exposed to bacteria, which is a health risk. Overall, just be mindful of what's going on with your system, and you should be just fine. There are lots of different components of a septic system that we covered earlier, and sometimes they require repairs or replacements. So let's talk about the signs you can look out for to check if your system might be failing or in need of repair. And I do apologize for the images in the next few slides, as they are not very pretty. All right, there are 6 things to keep an eye out for that can indicate something is off with your septic system. If you notice your fixtures are draining slowly or sewage is backing up into the house, this can indicate a problem with your tank or drain field. If you try cleaning out your fixtures and that doesn't solve the problem, call a contractor. If the ground above your drain field is soggy, it's growing unusually lush vegetation, or your yard suddenly stinks of sewage, you should schedule an inspection. And if you start to see sewage surfacing on the ground around your tank or drain field, that's a definite sign of a problem, and you should call someone immediately. While not all of these mean your system is failing, they can be good indicators that something is wrong. And as you can see, the common theme here is that you should have a certified professional inspect your system to determine the next steps. Additional things you can look out for are tree or plant roots infiltrating your tank or drain field, cracks, leaks, and clogs in your system, and an overaccumulation of waste in your tank. If you notice any of these things happening, it doesn't mean your system is failing. It just means you may need to hire a contractor to make some repairs or pump your tank. If you don't fix these things after noticing them, it could lead to more severe problems down the line. Because taking care of your septic system can be inconvenient and cost money, it's pretty easy to ignore it. Also, since the whole process is underground, it's easy to have an out of sight, out of mind relationship with your septic system. But Maintaining your system is important, and by maintaining your septic system, you help protect the health of yourself and the health of your community. If your system begins to fail, untreated wastewater goes out into the world, and there are many reasons to be concerned about that, including your personal health, the health of the environment, and the health of your bank account. First, we'll talk about how septic systems can impact your health. If it's functioning properly, you don't have to worry about anything, but a malfunctioning septic system can be a risk to anyone or anything living on the property. Sewage backing up into the house can put people at risk due to the bacteria and pathogens coming into living spaces. If your system is failing, sewage can also surface in your yard above your drain field, and kids or pets playing in the yard can get exposed to pathogens. It can also easily spread throughout your property after heavy rains. And even if there isn't visible sewage, if it isn't getting fully treated before returning to the groundwater, it can contaminate wells either on your property or nearby and create unsafe drinking water. Also, when untreated wastewater finds its way to beaches, lakes, and rivers, the high bacteria and nutrient levels can contribute to these areas being closed to the public because it becomes unsafe to swim or fish. A septic system that isn't working correctly also harms the environment. Pouring things down the drain like medicine, chemicals, and other products are not only damaging to your septic system, but they can create a toxic environment for plants and animals. Eventually, the water from your septic system flows back into the environment, and if it isn't treated properly before it reaches groundwater or a nearby stream, lake, or shore, it can infect these sources of water and disrupt normal habitats. Shellfish in particular have a tendency to accumulate pollutants and toxins, which makes them poisonous for people to eat if the waters that they live in are not clean. Because of this risk, shellfish beds can be closed for commercial and recreational harvesting. One of the main issues is high nutrient levels from human activities, including agriculture, fertilizers, pet waste, and also failing septic systems. High nutrient levels lead to algae blooms, which upset the balance of marine environments. And while failing septic systems aren't the only factor contributing to this issue, it's important to do what we can to improve water quality in our area, since it's subject to so many sources of pollution. To give you an idea of water quality, this map is of shellfish bed classifications in our waters near Snohomish County. The State Department of Health updates this Washington Shellfish Safety Information Map frequently based on water quality tests. This map is from the end of January, and you can see that near our county, there are more areas closed to shellfish harvesting, which are in red, brown, and purple with red lines. One goal of ours is to reduce the pollution caused by septic systems that are failing or are in need of repairs, to improve water quality so shellfish beds can be reopened. And if you're curious to know how many septic systems there are in Snohomish County, here's a map of all the systems that existed in 2018. There are approximately 80,000 total, and on this map, the oldest systems are in red, the newest are in blue, and those in between are in green. Septic systems do exist in all corners of our county, and in this region, it's hard to be too far from any water source. And that's the case with properties for septic systems. Properties that don't have septic systems are in areas that have sewer service extended, and their wastewater is sent directly to a wastewater treatment facility to be treated instead of being treated on site like those on septic. While it's important for everyone to take care of their septic system, for those living by a lake or next to a stream, there are other county programs you can participate in. This is a short video put on by the Lakewise and Streamside programs to let you know more about it. If you're interested in these programs, you can reach out to our email address to have more information sent to you after this workshop.
Thank you for attending this workshop as it covers important information to help reduce pollution, to protect your families, as well as our local lakes, streams, and Puget Sound. My name is Alex Pittman, and I'm a watershed steward with Snohomish County Surface Water Management, or SWIM. In addition to this workshop, SWIM provides county residents with information and assistance to help protect our region's natural resources. We hope you'll consider one of these programs if you live near a lake or on a stream.
Lakes are special places. Yet today, many are at risk from increasing phosphorus pollution, which can lead to toxic algae blooms. Residents living near lakes wanted to know what they could do to reduce pollution and enhance water quality in our area, so we developed the LakeWise program. This program is available to all properties within a lake watershed. The LakeWise program has a checklist of the most important actions you can take to prevent pollution from making its way into our local lakes. LakeWise is completely voluntary and starts with the free educational site visit to talk about checklist items related to your property. These actions include caring for septic systems in yards, picking up pet waste, and covering bare and eroding soils with mulch or plants. If you complete all the actions on the checklist, you will become LakeWise certified and receive a LakeWise sign. Shoreline landowners can also obtain an additional Healthy Shores certification. Sign up today or get more information at www.lakewise.org. Streamside living offers landowners a special connection to the natural beauty of the Pacific Northwest. Yet, it also comes with a unique set of challenges and responsibilities. The Streamside Landowner Program empowers residents to become better stewards of their streams and helps residents address common issues such as flooding, bank erosion, beaver activity, and invasive species. The program offers free native trees and shrubs to plant along your stream, and guidance to help make your project a success. In some cases, we can also help with planting and invasive species control. Get involved by having a free, non-regulatory site visit with a watershed steward to discuss your questions, concerns, and opportunities for your streamside property. You can also attend an annual Streamside Landowner Workshop where you will connect with others and learn about actions you can take on your property to improve stream health. Sign up today or get more information at www.streams.surfacewater.info.
All right. And lastly, we need people's help noticing failing systems. So if you think something is off with a neighbor's system because there's a strong odor, or you see sewage surfacing nearby, or you see someone dumping wastewater, you can submit a complaint online through the health department. And the health department investigates complaints. And if there's an issue causing a public health hazard, we'll notify the owner that they are required to repair their system and we'll work with them to get things fixed. There are also a few substances in water that people can mistake for surfacing sewage. Sewage typically has a murky appearance, and sometimes it is almost milky or foggy, and it will always have a sewage odor. There are a few substances that look unpleasant but are not surfacing sewage. These include the rusty red-orange iron bacteria that can develop in water. It typically looks fuzzy and it may have an oily sheen, and it tends to develop in slow-moving or standing water. It can have an unpleasant odor, but it doesn't smell like sewage, and it is naturally occurring and harmless even though it looks pretty strange. There's also blue-green algae in lakes and other slow-moving water that can create a bright green surface. Blue-green algae blooms can create toxic conditions and cause public closures at lakes and shores, but its presence doesn't mean that there is sewage in the water. All right, so it's time for another short break again. Feel free to pause the video here and take a short break if you would like. I will set a 2-minute timer. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is septic contractors. I've mentioned that things can go wrong and how it's important to get your system inspected, and these require working with septic professionals. There are different contractors you'd need to contact in different situations, so I'll cover when to contact which contractor and how you can find contractors and also what to expect from them. There are four types of septic contractors: monitoring and maintenance professionals, pumpers, designers, and installers. For inspections, you would contact a monitoring and maintenance professional, and no matter what type of system you have, it's your responsibility to get it inspected. How often your system needs to be inspected depends on what type of system you have, which I mentioned earlier, and a monitoring and maintenance professional is also who you'd call if your system's alarm is going off. Don't put off calling them, have them come out to inspect your system right away if that's happening. These contractors can also perform limited repairs on systems, such as replacing pumps, broken pipes, distribution boxes, or baffles. When it's time to have your tank pumped, you'll need to contact a pumper who can remove the septage from your tank. They will pump out the entire contents of your septic tank and, if needed, the pump tank or ATU as well. They will also take the septage to a proper disposal facility. Pumpers can perform inspections and minimal repairs only on gravity systems. And designers are the people you would contact if you need a whole new septic system or a major repair. They'll work with you to design a suitable system for your property, and they're also the people who can help you designate a reserve area if you don't have one. After a designer plans your system, installers are the ones who put everything in place based on the specifications provided by the designer. It's also very important that these professionals are certified or licensed, and they should be able to provide proof if you're unsure. The county certifies monitoring and maintenance professionals, installers, and pumpers, and designers are licensed by the state. As for how to find a contractor, for all contractors besides designers, it's pretty easy. You'll To find a list of certified monitoring and maintenance professionals, installers, and pumpers, you'll go to our website, snohd.org, which you were at earlier with me, and you watched me click through onto the septic page. And then if you remember where you found the as-built button, there should also be a button that says Find a Contractor. So once you click on that, you'll land on the Find a Contractor septic page, and you can click on the button that says View List, which you can see here on the screen. It's a good idea to get multiple opinions or bids so that you get a fair price. And one type of professional that's not on our list is designers. So to find a designer, we recommend you do an internet search for septic designers in Snohomish County and make sure they're licensed. They're not on our lists because the Department of Licensing handles their licensing, not the county. So designers are able to design septic systems anywhere in the state and not just specifically in our county, which is why the state keeps track of them. Next, we'll go over what to expect from monitoring and maintenance professionals and pumpers who you'd contact on a more regular basis to keep up with the maintenance of your system. To give you an idea of what to expect when you hire a contractor and a monitoring and maintenance professional specifically, these are some of the parts of your system they will inspect. They'll look at tank inlets and outlets to check for leaks or damage. They'll inspect the drain field looking for signs of problems and will look in monitoring ports if you have them. They'll check the condition of distribution boxes and other distribution devices to make sure they're intact. They'll check on and off floats in the pump tank to make sure they go off at the right time, and they'll test alarms. They'll do pressure tests to make sure the water is flowing like it should out to the drain field. And they can do minor repairs on your system as well. Whenever a monitoring and maintenance professional comes out to inspect your system, they are required to submit a report to the health department through online RME, the database I showed you earlier for septic system records. And you can access inspection reports through that database whenever you need to. Here's an example of what an inspection report would look like. They inspect a lot of components, and there's another page I'll show you on the next slide. It's a little bit small, but on this one you can see in red it says deficiencies were noted, corrections are in progress. So they're working on fixing the issues. Under on-site sewage system inspection detail, there are measurements of the scum and sludge layers, and it says yes for pumping recommended. They also looked at the system's aerobic treatment unit. This compartment needed pumping, so over on the far right you can see in progress in red because they're working on having it pumped. Some of the other parts they inspected were the pump, UV light, and drip irrigation, which is the type of dispersal system this person has in their drain field. As for what to expect with pumpers, they can be hired to pump any tank that is part of your system, including septic tanks, pump tanks, or ATUs, and basically anything that could accumulate a sludge and scum layer. They pump out the entire contents of the tank into their truck and haul it to a facility for proper treatment and disposal, which is typically a municipal wastewater treatment plant. After pumping your tank, they should secure everything back in place. And as I briefly mentioned earlier, they are able to inspect and perform minor repairs on gravity systems only. Just like monitoring and maintenance professionals, they need to upload reports to online RME. This is an example of a report from a pumping company. There is a comment section above and then what they did below. When a pumper comes to empty a septic tank, they also take a look at some of the other components. So, for example, on this report, it says yes to baffles are in good condition. I mentioned that monitoring and maintenance professionals can do small repairs, but what happens if you get your system inspected and there are significant issues? There are some situations that will require a permit. Permits are required for any new systems, major repairs, or changes or additions to the existing system. For example, if your septic system is failing and it's determined that the whole system needs to be replaced, you would need a permit. Examples of major repairs requiring permits would be like replacing a drain field, for example, switching to your reserve area, or replacing a septic tank. Changes or additions, such as adding a pre-treatment unit like an ATU, or increasing the size of the drain field would also require a permit. All of these situations require you to hire a licensed designer or professional engineer to design the repair, and then you would need to hire an installer to install it. For minor repairs, some can be completed without a permit. And all permitting steps can be found on our website, but we'll briefly cover them here too. If your septic system has an issue that requires a major repair, here's what you need to know about the permit process. There are a lot of steps, but our environmental health specialist will help you get through them. And this shows the general steps, though there are some minor ones in between and some new steps that can arise depending on your situation and how things go. So as a basic overview, the first step is to contact a licensed designer. As I mentioned earlier, it's important that they're licensed, and they'll take a look at how to repair the system and submit a repair application to the health department. We'll then make sure the application is complete, and then you'll pay a fee to submit it. The health department will review the design to make sure it meets code, and if everything looks good, a permit will be given to install the system. Then after it's installed, both the designer and the health department will inspect the system to make sure things went according to plan. Then your permit will be signed and you're all set. And the last thing I'll cover in this workshop today is financial assistance that's available to homeowners. Snohomish County offers assistance in a few ways to help cover the costs of septic system maintenance and repairs through our Savvy Septic program. I'll go over what options are available to homeowners and how to apply. A failing septic system can really hurt your wallet, which is another reason it's important to keep up with caring for your system. The cost of maintenance is fairly minimal compared to the cost of major repairs. For instance, getting your system replaced can cost $30,000 or more, so catching things early is really important, and you'll want to avoid major expenses by taking care of your system and any smaller repairs before they turn into something bigger. Additionally, if you plan to sell your home or build additions in the future, if your septic system has issues, it could cause problems and significant delays with those processes. One option to help with costs that is available to all homeowners is rebates through the county's Savvy Septic program. Currently, there are 2 rebates available. One is to install risers, and you can get $50 back for each riser installed for up to 2 risers. There's also a $100 rebate for inspections performed by a certified monitoring and maintenance professional. These are open to all homeowners in Snohomish County, and you can apply for another rebate 24 months after your last septic rebate. Make sure that you use a certified provider to ensure you're eligible for a rebate. And if you sign up for our septic newsletter, you'll be notified if we add any more rebate options in the future as we continue to build the Savvy Septic program. Coming soon will be an option for Savvy Septic grants. They have been an option in the past, and currently applications are on hold as we revamp our processes to make things easier for both homeowners and contractors that are hired to complete the work. Grants would be for major septic related costs like large repairs, system replacements, or other high cost work like connecting to sewer if replacing a system isn't possible. To be eligible, you must have a household income less than 60% of the state median income. Your septic system must be failing, and you must own and live on the property. If you would like to be notified when grants become available, please send us an email and we'll add you to our notification list. And aside from rebates and grants through Savvy Septic, there are low interest clean water loans available through Craft 3, which is a nonprofit lender in Washington and Oregon state. A main eligibility requirement for them is that one of the following applies. So your septic system is 25 years or older, the system is failing, you've been contacted by health officials to repair your system, or you're under orders to fix your system. You also may want to contact Craft 3 if you won't qualify for a grant through Savvy Septic, but still need assistance financing an expensive repair or system replacement. And to give you a better idea of how Craft 3 works with homeowners to finance septic repairs and replacements, they created this short video about a project from another area of Washington state that they work in. So I'll play that now.
I just love this area, I always have loved this area. We have the Cascades on one side and the Olympics on the other. It doesn't really get much better than what we've got here.
This stream is flowing from way up the hill. It originates as a spring and it flows down through residential areas, and so on its way down it picks up stormwater from the roads, it picks up roof drains from the homes, and as we've learned over the years, a lot of times it picks up failing septic systems as well.
The toilets just sometimes wouldn't flush. I happened to Google septic systems and found the name of All County Operations, and I called that number and spoke with Hercules Hubble. He showed up actually that same day. I am on a fixed income. I do still have the mortgage payment, and having the septic pump and then having somebody actually come out and look and say, well, this is wrong, we could try this, but it's going to cost you this. All in all, it's turned into over $26,000 for me to replace the system. Working with septics and stuff, Hercules was able to tell me about the Craft 3 loans that were available and that I would probably qualify.
We've had customers where you tell them at first that, you know, you need a new system, and it's a big impact on them. The first time I got connected with Craft 3 was the Kitsap County Health Department was promoting the information for all the installers and designers in the area to help out and let people know, hey, there is an option here if you do have a problem with your septic system.
This area has been an area that we've worked in probably since 1991 to locate and correct failing septic systems. Clams and oysters, gooey ducks, etc. Because they're filter feeders, they tend to accumulate bacteria and viruses in their gut. So we want to make sure that they're healthy to collect recreationally and commercially. I know from a tribal perspective, there are a number of tribal members that rely on shellfish harvesting as their source of income in this county.
Craft 3 was approached by oyster growers and county commissioners that were interested in trying to develop a means to replace failed septic systems that were polluting the bay, and came up with a product, Clean Water Loan. that focused on septic replacement, creating job opportunities for local folks. Subsequently, we were approached by folks out of Hood Canal, and they said, you can solve a problem like water pollution in a body of water like Hood Canal through a capital product. So it was an opportunity, probably the first opportunity, for us to develop a targeted product focused on consumers that run all three bells of our impact measures.
We rely on Craft 3 to provide an option for our homeowners when they're faced with fixing a failing septic system. Having the ability to direct a homeowner to that resource and people that understand how septic systems work and what the permitting process is, and they also understand the financing, it's actually very rare, and so it's very helpful.
Craft 3's helped a lot with stabilizing our business. We probably average at about 40 systems a year. It's just a win-win for the homeowner and the contractor.
We have much cleaner waters than most people have, and so we just need to be really aware and try to keep this area as pristine as it is. We love the area so much and want our kids to have the same thing that we do.
Hopefully you enjoyed that video on Craft 3, and depending on what you're interested in, there are different steps to apply. For rebates and grants, you'll visit the website savvyseptic.org where you can apply online. For rebates, you'll complete an application form. You'll attach your receipts as proof of payment and send it in over email or mail. We'll verify that the work was done by checking the service history in Online RME, and then we'll process the rebate so long as you meet the other eligibility requirements. As I mentioned earlier, grant applications are on hold, but the information will be posted on the website as soon as they become available. And for that website, they'll be posted on snohd.org and savvyseptic.org. Craft 3 loans are done entirely through Craft 3, not through Snohomish County. They process their own applications and will approve or deny based on their eligibility requirements, and you can find their application link on their website. And that covers our last topic for this evening. If you're feeling like that was a lot of information, it was, but here's a quick list of things you can start doing now to keep up with your septic system care. There are changes you can start doing right away, like spacing out loads of laundry, making sure nothing bad goes down the drain, and walking your drain field area to see if everything seems all right. Things you could do this year would be schedule an inspection if it's been a while since you've done that. You could clear off your drain field if you've put something on top of it, and you can take some more time to learn about your system, especially if it has advanced components. We're also starting a quarterly newsletter with septic information for homeowners, and you can sign up for that on our survey after this workshop. You can also take a look at the additional resources on our website so that you have them for reference. After this workshop, if you are not attending it live, you will not be receiving a follow-up email. However, resources will be available on our website for anything that we've mentioned during this workshop. And if you have any questions, you can always email us at this very long email on screen. It's also on our website, but feel free to write that down and copy and paste it into your email. All right, thank you all so much for attending and taking time out of your day. We're so glad you could attend the workshop, and hopefully it gave you some useful information about taking care of your septic system. I would like to say thank you to some organizations whose images were used in our workshop, which include the county's Lakewise program, Washington State Department of Health, the EPA, Tacoma Pierce County, Benton Franklin County, Clark County, and Clallam County Health Departments. Have a great rest of your day and take care.